and welcome to the talkSPORT YouTube channel. My name is Harry Durham. Let's go through the biggest footballing headlines of the day with talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Alex, there seems to be some big question marks around the future of certain managers, so I'm going to kick off with this man. I think it might be all paper talk and a bit of overreaction. I mean, with you being the chief football reporter here at talkSPORT, Eddie Howe's future at Newcastle isn't under threat, is it?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. Not from the hierarchy perspective. I think they're appreciative, the Newcastle owners, that it was a difficult summer in many ways. Obviously missed out on a lot of their top transfer targets. The Alexander Isak saga hung like a big cloud over St James's Park, and I do think actually that maybe should have come to a head a bit sooner. I think the owners should have gone to Liverpool and said, this is our asking price. Let's get the deal done. It dragged on for far too long. And actually, if you look at the Isak situation, there aren't really any winners because Newcastle have got worse without him. Liverpool haven't got any better. And he is kicking his heels on the bench at the Etihad on Sunday, watching the champions being taught a little bit of a footballing lesson. But Eddie Howe has been here before. He's been through these bad patches at Newcastle. The fans, by and large, have stuck with him. And I think he's got enough credit in the bank, having ended their several decade-long trophy drought. He's qualified them for the Champions League not once but twice in his tenure, and actually they're going quite well in that competition. 9 points so far on the board. They're in a decent position to qualify for the knockout stages. They've got a League Cup quarter-final to come against your beloved Fulham, a game that you would expect Newcastle to win. So they could have eyes on Wembley once again. So I think any noise that is being generated about Eddie Howe's future is very much coming from the outside rather than from within the corridors of power at St James's Park. Having said that, obviously, they're too close to the relegation places at the moment. They're not in any danger of going down, but they look a long way short of being a European team, and that would have been the minimum expectation, I think, at the start of the season. So they do need to improve, particularly away from home. Yet to win away this season, that's been their real Achilles heel.
That must be quite frustrating for the Newcastle fans. So obviously, it was the goal against PSG a couple of years ago, which really was like the thorn in their side in the Champions League. And then obviously you're seeing like everything that's happened in the summer, and they get a second pop at it in the Champions League, and they would have been like, do you know what? It was great the first time we got that opportunity, and then they had injuries and they had the Tonali ban at the same time as well. It must be quite frustrating because, you know, depending on how and where they're going to finish in the Premier League this season, it might be another few seasons until they get Champions League football again.
Yeah, I think it's difficult this year. I mean, 5 places probably available for the Premier League again, because obviously the English teams are faring so well in Europe. But you look at the league table, City and Arsenal pretty much nailed on to take 2 of those 5 places. I'd probably put Chelsea into a similar bracket. Then you've got the likes of Liverpool, Manchester United, Tottenham. I think what we're seeing actually at the top of the Premier League this year is the sort of normal order being restored. We've had some interlopers, haven't we, in recent seasons? Aston Villa qualified, Newcastle on 2 occasions. You've had Nottingham Forest, who filled the top 4 for much of last season. Brighton and Bournemouth have flirted with it, but I think it's going to be difficult to see anybody outside that so-called Big Six qualifying for the Champions League this season.
Could Steven Gerrard be back in a job in the next couple of weeks or even days from what we're seeing in the papers this morning?
It's a tricky one with Gerrard. I think he still is going to have some tax implications up until the end of the year. That was obviously a big factor in him not returning to Ibrox, although not the main factor. I think really he didn't feel comfortable working with the sporting director, Kevin Felwell, and that's why that one fell by the wayside. I think he said himself publicly that he still has an itch to scratch when it comes to management, and you're obviously talking about Middlesbrough. I don't think they've got a definitive number 1 target in mind yet. Obviously, they weren't planning actively for the departure of Rob Edwards only 14 games into his tenure. But I think Gerrard is somebody that Steve Gibson admires. The same down at Southampton. He's been interviewed by them in the past, so I think they're probably going to stick with their under-21 coach. But the Championship is going to be an interesting place, I think, in the next few weeks, because there are a lot of managers who have either lost their jobs or are teetering on the brink of doing so.
They all just want Christmas off, don't they, at this point? Take a little bit of, leaving payment money and have a good Christmas. No, they want to pick up results. I'm only joking. Celtic, obviously, Martin O'Neill's in there on an interim basis. I'm obviously reading your email from last night and your messages from last night. Columbus Crew's boss, Wilfred Nancy. I mean, for people that don't know and, don't follow the MLS, I mean, I'm not in tune with anything that's going on in the MLS. Is Zlatan still at LA Galaxy? I don't even know. Who is Wilfred Nancy? What could, if it does come to fruition, he's a leading contender for Celtic's new manager. What could the Celtic fans expect from Wilfred? Who is he?
Well, he was the man who first replaced Thierry Henry at Montreal over in Canada. That was back in 2021. And he started well there. They extended his contract quite early in his tenure. They lost in the quarterfinals of the CONCACAF Champions League, but clearly he did enough there to attract the attention of Columbus Crew, which is where he's now managing. He's been there since December of 2022. They paid a hefty compensation package to get him. They finished third in his first season in charge. I'm told that he plays a very attractive brand of football, which obviously would go down well with the Celtic supporters. They actually lost to Los Angeles FC in the finals before going on to win the MLS Cup. So he's got a decent pedigree stateside, but obviously it's hard to see how that would translate necessarily to the Scottish Premier Division. The other name on their shortlist is that of Ketil Knutsen, who's done so well at Bodo Glimt, sort of hipster's choice, if you like, for football fans. That is complicated because although his contract is up in December, I think he'd be reluctant to move all the time. Bodo Glimt are still in the Champions League. So at the minute, I think that's probably giving Wilfred Nancy the edge, and we'll see if that develops.
So can we expect to hear Martin O'Neill back on the talkSPORT airways very, very soon? I always hate it with an interim basis because it's like he's actually, is he 4 games, lost 1, won 3. It's like falling in love with a lone player, isn't it? I mean, Martin's got his history, but has there been zero discussions whatsoever for him to take over Celtic for the rest of the season?
I think those conversations probably will take place during this international break. It's a good time to take stock, and he's gone in and obviously closed the gap at the top of the table. But I think it was only ever an interim appointment, hence the fact that this Nancy deal could well be moving. He beat Los Angeles FC. I said he lost to Los Angeles FC. They beat them in that final to become the first black coach to win the MLS Cup. So, as I say, his pedigree stateside is decent. Whether it's the type of name that will get Celtic fans excited, I think it's probably open to debate.
Right, should we talk about it then? Obviously, you alluded to me being a Fulham fan. I mean, half an hour you broke the news with talkSPORT that there's doubts over Marco Silva's future at Fulham, weighing up his options, of course. You say, obviously, in the piece that you've done that tensions are mounting behind the scenes at Craven Cottage with Silva reluctant to sign a new deal. It doesn't take a genius to work this out. Obviously, I know a lot that's going on with the football club, but I think these tensions have been brewing even before we were back in the Premier League. What more can you bring us on this, especially with his contract expiring at the end of the season?
Well, yeah, he's a manager, Marco Silva, who's never one to hide his frustration with the hierarchy. I spoke to him a couple of times over the summer, and on one occasion, a week before the window was due to close, he said, we simply haven't done enough. We've left it too late. We need to make up for lost time. And even after the window had closed, he admitted publicly, didn't he, that he expected more from the hierarchy. So I think this is where a lot of it stems from. Obviously, you mentioned his own contract situation that expires at the end of the season. I think there's a frustration amongst the Fulham board that he's so far shown a reluctance or a lack of willingness to extend his contract, which always brings a bit of uncertainty into the dressing room and amongst the fans as well. So would you say tensions mounting? And then you look at the start they've had to the season, Fulham. Their away form is absolutely wretched. Well beaten at Everton at the weekend. He was quite scathing, Marco Silva, of his team's performance. He didn't really pick out any positives from their display at Everton's magnificent new stadium. And they are only a point above the relegation place. And I think what's focusing the minds of a lot of these established Premier League clubs, that's why West Ham moved so quickly to get rid of Graham Potter, is the fact that Sunderland in particular are not going down. So we're not going to see a scenario where for the third season in a row, 3 teams come up, all go back down. Leeds and Burnley are down there. But again, they're much more competitive than what we've seen from those teams coming up from the Championship for the last couple of seasons. So this is definitely a situation to keep an eye on over the course of the international break. But we've been here before with Marco Silva. He was quite close to upping sticks to Saudi Arabia 18 months or so ago and ended up staying. So you still wouldn't be surprised if he did put pen to paper on a long-term contract. But the noise I'm getting from behind the scenes are not particularly positive at this moment in time.
That's what happens when your top goal scorer is own goals from other teams. Kevin's not really shone like we thought he would, one of our club record signings, but it is what it is. Crookie, thank you so much for your time. Look forward to speaking to you soon.